In this video we will be adding some range check to our towers so that we can start attacking our monsters further down the road. To do that we'll have to add some kind of collider to the towers, and we will also have to make that collider visible to us whenever we pick a tower to place it, so that we can see how far the range will be when we will place it in the map. And besides that, we will also be able to, or we'll have to add some functionality so that we can select a tower, and when we have the tower selected, we should be able to see the range on that tower, so we know how far that tower can reach. So let's get started. The first thing we have to do is to add a range to our towers, and we can just do it for one of the towers at a time, and then you'll get an understanding of how we do this. So if we select the prefab folder and go to the towers, we will see we have 4 different towers. We will have to add a range to every single tower so that we know how far they can reach. So go to game object, or actually I think it's in assets, and then can create, there it is, create, and then sprite. And I am going to go with a circle because I want a circle parameter around my towers for deciding how far my tower can reach. So when you have the circle, you can simply write range. So this is going to be the range of our towers, okay? So we need to measure how big the range needs to be. So take a fire tower, for example, and place it in your game here, okay? When you've done that, you take the range in the game, and you take a range sprite here and move it on top of the fire tower here, so we have it up here. Okay, so the range needs to be below the fire tower, so put the range above it here so that the fire tower should be rendered. Okay, it doesn't work, so instead we're going to say that the range here, the order in layer, is going to -1. Okay, that's easier. When you have set it to -1, we need to set the size of it. Okay, so what I've been doing, I tested with some different ranges and everything, and I figured that 6.5 and 6.5, and that's actually a little too big. Sorry, give me 1 sec, I need to check my notes to see if I use 6.5 or 5.6. I guess I'm using 5.6 instead. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is 5.6. Sorry about the weight. Sorry. Yeah, 5.6. Okay, so select the range and say it 5.6, like so, and 5.6 here. Okay, so when you have done that, we need to place the circle or the range here in the middle, so that the tower is actually in the center of this. And to do that, you simply select the range, and then you'll see there's a little circle here, right? And that little circle needs to be placed in the center of the tower's gun. So if it's placed out here, then take it and place it as good as you can in the center of the tower's gun. When you've done that, we need to change the color. You can pick any color you want. I want my range to be blue, so I select it here, and I go into blue and select some kind of light blue color. And if you would like to, then maybe you want to be able to see what's underneath the range here. So you can select the range and then click the color and then set the alpha a little down maybe. Let's try 57 and see, that's my node. So select here and write maybe 50. I'm just gonna go with 57. So now you'll see that this one is see-through. So when we create a map underneath it, if I can click the play button, and let's see, what is these are -1, so let's just do like so. We take the range tower, this one is 1, so if we put the fire tower to 1 and the range one to 0 here and play again, then you'll see that the range here is now on top of the tiles, right? So if it's confusing what I just did, I selected the range and I set the order in layer to 0, and I took the fire tower's order in layer to 1. So when you've done that, you take the range and you put it as a child object of the fire tower, and then you pull it down here again to your prefab folder, so it replaces the fire tower. So you need to select Frost Tower, poison tower and the storm tower and set their order in layer to 1 to make sure that they're on top of their range. And then we need to add a range to each and every one of them, right? So first take the frost tower out, take the range out, or actually just take the fire maybe, and then pull the range out of the fire. Take the range and equip it to the frost tower and delete the fire tower. So I took the fire prefab out here, removed the range from the fire prefab, or moved it to the frost tower. Let's see here, and we have the fire tower here. The fire tower from before, we can just delete it. Then you take the range and move it so that the little spot here is kind of centered in the cannon of the frost tower. And then you take the frost tower and pull it down to the frost tower here. And then we can take the poison tower in, and basically we can take the range here, pull it onto the poison tower, delete the frost tower, and then take the range and pull it all the way over so it's centered inside the cannon here of our poison tower. It's just roughly centered, right? Take the poison tower back and put it in here, and in the end we take the storm tower, pull it back, take the range and move it over here, delete the poison tower, and move the range to the center of the gun here. And there we go. And when you have done that, you simply take the storm tower and pull it all the way down here on top of the other storm tower. So now you should have a range on every single one of your towers here, and then delete the storm tower. Besides that, select your range. We should have done that before actually, but let's just do it now because I forgot to do that. Hold Control down and select all your ranges, all ranges here. Click Add and then write Collider, and there should be some kind of circle collider 2D, and select that one and select it as is trigger. Okay, so when you add a tower to the game now, you'll see that there's this green ring around it. That's because we have a trigger on our range, so when the monsters will enter that range, well, the tower will target that monster so that we can actually attack it. Okay, so just delete the fire tower here again and just pull them to check. So now you will see whenever you pick a tower and place it, it has a range around it, right? But right now we can't see the range before we place it, and that's kind of bad because I set it here. Now we'll see that two ranges are overlapping, and we're not interested in that. We want to be able to see our range when we are moving the towers around in the game. So let's actually add a range to our hover icon as well. So to do that, we can go to our canvas here because we have our hover icon somewhere there. Actually, it's not even a canvas thing, it's actually in our game. That's fine. And you can see it has no sprite right now, but we need to add a sprite to it just for now so that we can test how it's actually going to look when we are playing the game. So select the sprite here and then just find right icon. Just select fire icon, for example, just an example. And then we have to take the range. Let's take the fire tower in again and take the range and pull it to the hover icon, and then delete the fire tower from the scene. And then we take the range here and move it all the way down here and place it in the center of the tower, kind of as good as you can as well, just kind of there, right? So now the tower should be centered inside the blue ring. And then you take the hover and you go to the sprite here again, select it, and then you go all the way up and say none. And now we don't have a fire icon on it. And we can also go down here to the range and maybe, I don't know, we can disable the sprite. Actually, we don't need the circle collider on it, so we can right click on the circle collider and remove that. And then, yeah, simply just, yeah, I guess we can disable the sprite so it doesn't show up inside the scene here right now. So let's try to add some scripting so that we can see the range when we are moving around the towers first of all. So if we go to scripts and find our hover somewhere there, is our hover. And in here we have to add some new functionality. So in the top, we have to make a range sprite renderer. So we have a sprite renderer here, but we also need to make a sprite renderer. Called ranged sprite renderer. Let's call it range renderer. Okay. And this is actually just a reference to the range check on the tower. So when we've done that, we can go all the way down here. When we activate it, well, we'll have to say range sprite renderer dot enabled equals true. And when we deactivate, we have to say range sprite renderer dot enabled equals false, right? So we enable it. We enable it when we show the hover icon, and we disable it when we're done showing the hover icon, of course. You can also move it up here just to have the code next to each other if you think that's more convenient. What else? We need to set a reference to it. So how do we do that? Well, the range sprite renderer is on the child, right? So we can say this dot ranged sprite renderer equals transform dot get child 0. So why do we do that? Why do we say get child 0? Well, our hover icon has the hover script on it, and that's the script we're writing in at the moment, right? Get child 0 is actually the first child because it's 0 indexed. So the first child under the hover icon is called 0. So now we're working with the range. So when we write this code, we are actually handling the range. And then we say get component sprite renderer. So this sprite renderer here will now have a reference to the sprite renderer, so we can enable and disable it from the script that is sitting on the parent here. So that's pretty neat. So let's see what happens. Let's try to play the game, and we take a storm tower, and it's not showing. So let's see why it's not showing here. I forgot to save, I think, actually. That was not very clever. Let's try to save. Try one more time and see if it works. If it doesn't work, we need to figure out why. And there we go. So now you can see I have a tower with a range on it, and when I put it, we still have the range. Okay, so that's one thing. Right now we can see the range all the time, and that's pretty disturbing. Or like it's pretty annoying to look at, right? That we can see all these ranges here. So we should only be able to see the range on a tower that we are actually targeting right now. So we have this range showing, and we can see it when we are placing the tower, but now we need to remove it again from the towers, right? So let's see what we need to do to fix that. So to be able to select our towers, we will have to add a function to the tower script. And right now I don't think we have created the tower script. Let's see, we have just script here, and no, we don't have a tower script yet. So let's right click in our script folder, create new C# script, and call this one tower. So the tower script, well, it's in reality it's actually going to be sitting on the range, actually, because the range will have the functionality for checking if we hit the monsters and everything. And just to make it easier for us to check if we are colliding with a monster we need to attack, well, then we're going to add tower scripts to our what is it called, our range instead of the actual tower. So for now, we can just go to the range here, select all the ranges like so, add component, and write tower. And then they all have the tower script on them. When we have done that, we need to add some functionality to the tower script. So let's try to open up the new tower script we just created here. Inside the new tower script we created, we need to create a function called select, because we need to be able to select the towers. There will go a lot of extra functionality into that this script here, but for now we will just make a public void called select. And what will the select do? The select will simply take and enable the range when we select the tower right now. So simply say private my sprite renderer equals let's just do it like this, start and say my sprite renderer equals get component sprite renderer, like so. There we go. So now we have a reference to the sprite renderer, because remember that it's sitting on, if we take a prefab towers here, first tower, remember that the script is sitting here on the range, so we can take the sprite renderer here and enable and disable it as we select it, right? Okay. So let's just take the first tower, delete it again. Now we have a reference to that sprite renderer I just enabled and disabled in the editor. The select function will say my sprite renderer dot enabled equals my sprite renderer dot enabled with a negative with a exclamation mark in front of it. So if it's enabled, it will disable it, and if it's disabled, it will enable it, right? So we can use the select function here to select and to deselect. So we can use both, using both things. So that's what we need to do in here for now. So let's figure out where we need to call this function. So we need to call this from our game manager. So let's go to the game manager and create a new function. We already have something called pick tower, buy tower, and so on. Let's create a new tower called, not new tower, no function called select tower. Let's do that. And it needs to take in a tower so that we know which one to select, of course, right? Okay. So the game manager needs to keep track of the selected tower. So we also need to create a new variable of the type tower, a private tower, selected tower, and this variable here will simply be the current selected tower, right? So we will keep track of the current selected tower by doing this. And I can't spell apparently. There we go. And then we go back to our, let's see, did I really put it that far away? There we go. We're going to go back to our function here, and we need to do something to select our tower, right? So first of all, if our selected, well, actually, let's just take it step by step. We can see how it works, so we don't write the full function right away. Let's just write parts of it. So selected tower equals tower. And what do we have to do? Well, we just created a new function inside the tower called select, which enables or disables the sprite renderer based on the selection. So we go back here and say selected tower dot select. There we go. So we select the tower, we set the selected tower equal to the tower we just selected, and call select on it so we show or hide the sprite renderer. So now we need to figure out where to call this from. Well, a good place to execute this functionality for selecting the tower would be inside the tile script, because inside the tile script we have mouse over and we are checking if we are clicking a tile. So right now we are checking if our event system and so on, but we are going to make an other if statement here, because right now we're checking, well, if we don't hover over an event system and the selected button or click button isn't null. So if our player, or if we have selected a tower, if we click the tower, then it's going to execute the function here, right? All the functionality we have here. But if we don't have a tower selected, so the opposite of this, well, then we need to check if we can select a tower on the tile. So we can say else if event system dot current that is pointer over game object and game manager that instance, apparently I can't write correctly, game manager that instance that click button is null. So if we are not over a game object, event system is not over a game object, nothing is blocking our view, and we are clicking on a tile, for example, then we check, well, did we already select the tower? Well, we didn't select the tower, so we need to, or we didn't buy a tower, we're not trying to buy a tower, so we need to check if there's a tower on this tile we're trying to click. And if that's the case, well, then we need to select it. So we have to make sure that the tile script has a reference to the tower standing on it. And we can do that by going up here and make a private variable called tower, called my tower. And my tower is going to be set whenever we create or buy a new tower and place it on the actual tile here. So we need to set it in the place tower function in the tile script. See if we can find it somewhere. There's a place tower function. So basically when we set the transform or wherever we do it, we can say this dot my tower equals tower dot transform dot get child 0 dot get component tower. So remember, we're going to the child object because the script is sitting on the ranged, right, which is the child object of the actual tower here. So this will now have a reference to the tower script sitting on the tower that is on this tile here. Okay. So if we go back here, we can say we can write some code that says if my tower isn't null, and then say else down here. If my tower isn't null, then I say game manager dot instance dot select that's right, game manager dot instance dot select tower my tower. So then I'm trying to tell the player, well, you just clicked on my tile, I have a tower on my tile, so you need to try to select my tower. And that's exactly what he's doing. So remember to save the script and jump back into Unity. And in here we need to disable the renderer on every single range here, just from the get-go. So select all the ranges and go to sprite renderer and disable it, so it's disabled from standard. Okay, so let's try to do this. Let's try to play our game, and then we can take a tower and place it here. Now we can't see the blue ring. If I click on the tile, nothing's going to happen. So let's see what's why it's not working here. So the problem is actually the fact that our code is missing something, and that we are also blocking our own click with the range collider that we have on our tower. First of all, let's go to the code here. We'll see in this area of the code we're not checking if we're clicking the mouse button anywhere. So we'll also have to add this little check out here in the end, saying and input get mouse button down 0, so that the code down here will only be executed when we click the mouse button. So we can only select the tower by clicking on it, not just by hovering it with the mouse. Okay, with that done, you'll see that if we play the game, if we place a tower, it will still not work, right? We can't select this one. So we'll have to find the tower here. Just to testing, we will fix this in the prefab. If you select the storm tower here and say that, if you find the range and say the layer of the range needs to be ignore raycast, because right now the layer here is actually blocking all the tiles around it from raycasting, which means that we can't click any tiles in this area here unless we say that it has to be on the ignore raycast layer. So now it's on the ignore raycast layer, and let's try to disable the sprite render again. And if I click it now, you'll see that I can click enable and disable it by clicking on the tower tile here, right? So you'll see that we can enable and disable. So we have to select all the range here, all the ranges here. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do. I want to select all the ranges like so, and go to layer and say ignore raycast layer on every single range here. When that is done, you can play the game, and you can now select towers by clicking on them, as you can see here. But there is one little problem. As you can see, we can select more towers. We can and to disable or to remove the range, we'll have to click on the exact same tower. So we actually need to create a function called deselect tower, which will be called whenever we place a tower, or whenever we click a tower and we click on a new button or new tower button, and or when we click anywhere else in the game, so that we can't select more towers like this, because this doesn't make any sense. It will only make sense to select one single tower like so we can see what we have selected, and this will also be used for upgrading the towers later, of course. So we have to go back to our game manager script, and we have to go all the way down to our select function there, and simply we need to create a new function called public void deselect tower. And in here we say if selected tower isn't null. So if the selected tower isn't null, then we say selected tower dot select to deselect it actually, and then we say selected tower equals null, like so. Sorry about the phone, I hope it wasn't too loud. Anyway, when we have set the selected tower to null, well then we don't have a selected tower anymore, and we just deselected it up here. So we can actually go back to our tile script and say game manager.instant does deselect tower my tower. Or actually we don't even need to give it a tower, it just needs to deselect the tower it already has selected. So if we save this now and we play the game again and we place our tower, I select it here and I clicked anywhere else, then it deselects the tower, as you can see, if I click anywhere else in the game, right? Like so. And it means if I have selected a tower and I buy a new tower here and I place it, well then this one is still selected. However, I am still able to click here and select another tower, because this one is not deselected when I click on a tower. So we need to add one more line of code inside the select tower function actually. So let's just go to our where is it, game manager here, and inside the select tower we need to add something. We need to make sure that if our selected tower isn't null when we try to select another tower, well then we need to say selected tower dot select, because we need to deselect the current tower we already have, right? So if we have a selected tower, then we need to deselect it before we actually start to show the selection of the new tower. So now we can try to save and play the game, and let's try to place a new tower, and we select this one up here, and now I want to select this one down here, and now you can see we can only select one tower at a time, because it actually switches between the selections here. Right, so that is how we can select our towers. So thank you very much for watching this video. Later in the videos we will start using this range for something, so that our towers can actually target our monsters, and then later we can start attacking them when we have them on target. So thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to like my Facebook page, follow me on Twitter, and subscribe to the channel for news about all my new videos here. Also, if you like my videos, then please consider supporting me, because remember that InScope Studios is supported by the community, which means that all your support is used to generate new assets and everything for my tutorials and create new tutorials. You can support me in different ways, and of course when you support me I also give you something back. If you support me, you will get all my projects that I've ever created, if you choose to do it on Patreon at least. So you can download all assets and everything I've created for every single project here on YouTube, or you can support me by getting one of the projects as a standalone product by clicking the link in the bottom of the screen. So thank you very much for watching.